Ladies and not ladies, I'm Romeu. We will talk today, this morning, the whole day about philosophy at Agile, and this morning we'll talk about reading code under the influence of one's emotions, right? You can use this QR code to come to this draw and take notes with me if you want. Like, you don't need to, but if at some point you want to correct my spelling or add your own notes or links, you're free to do that. Yeah? All right? So let's go for reading code. Have you ever written code? Yes, good. Have you ever read code? Hopefully, yes. There's this gentleman called Kent Beck. He spent some years ago, he wrote a very beautiful article that you can find and post on the SkyDraw if you want. He wrote an article about how he spent some months at a company called Facebook doing an editor for writing code, optimizing code writing, and then he gave up because he came to the conclusion that why would I optimize something that is like a very small amount of the time of a developer? Like, most people spend most of their time reading code and not writing code. Why do you optimize writing? Right? Make sense? Because if you are developing, if you're near a developer and the developer is making this sound, I will not put my own keyboard, but this sound, you know that person is not developing. Deep down, you know this is not code writing noise. You don't need to look at the screen. You just know, right? Because code writing is a way less intensive keyboard mashing activity. Yeah? You spend a lot of time thinking, like you have a line of code, you have to think where you put the line of code and things like that. So it takes a while, right? And which is interesting because we have a lot of data, a lot of books about how to write good code. And not a lot of things about how to read bad code. Yeah, it's not the focus of our attention. We spend most of the time reading code we judge as bad, and we do not actually invest a lot of that skill. Some people, since I started doing this talk like in 2016, and some people, they since have created books on that. Like, there is beautiful books. Feline Hermans did a book about reading code, and some people have created some talks about their own topics of reading code. And I think that's a beautiful thing to look all together. Like, my own point with this talk, if you only keep one thing, is I'm sharing with you what worked for me in the hopes that you share with people what worked for you. Yeah, I just want to get this discussion about our skills in code reading alive and kicking. And not that writing books about how to write good code is a bad thing per se. I'm not saying that. I'm not criticizing that endeavor. Right? Just saying we do not invest enough in reading. Why do we don't do that? We don't do that for the same reasons, I think, that we don't talk a lot about reading at all. We perceive reading as a Boolean skill. Like, it's something that you acquired and is done, right? But maturity never really works like that, right? There is no specific skill where it's done, where you can, like, any level of maturity with anything is something that you could improve all your life, right? Even being an adult is not something that you can just say, done, and then you put a trophy in your house and say, I'm an adult now, right? It doesn't work like that. You are ever longing, increasing in maturity, hopefully. Yeah? But we treat reading as something that, hey, I achieved that when I was a kid. My reading level when I was like 8 years old is a plateau for life. Now I know how to read. Good job. Yeah? And that's strange. That's strange. I'm not the first person to think that's strange. There's a guy, dude called Mortimer Adler. He wrote a book, How to Read a Book. Very beautiful book. And I highly recommend Adler's book, How to Read a Book. And he developed a set of skills in that book to how to improve the skill of reading, right? And today we're going to talk about that. Like, we're going to talk about 3 things. One about reading skills. We talk about emotional coping skills. Why are we talking about emotional coping skills? Have you ever read code and felt emotions? Yeah? Yeah, that's why we talk about that. And usually emotions are like awe and happiness, something like that, right? Like the admiration of the beauty in front of you. And it's going to talk about why I care about all that, right? So I start with the why I care about all that. The distance between a wink and a blink is intention. When you're winking, you're not doing this on purpose. When you're blinking, you're not doing this on purpose. You're not being deliberate. When you're winking, you are. Yes? And you cannot improve your winks, your blinks. You can improve your winks, you cannot improve your blinks. Right? You are blinking today in the same way you blinked your whole life, since you were a baby. But you are winking way better today than you winked when you were a small child. Hopefully. Right? Intention creates the avenue, deliberation intention creates the avenue for improvement. Yes? So if you read every day, but you're not conscious of it, you're not taking deliberate action towards it, then you never improve. It's like blinking. It becomes something in the background. Right? And you could do that to any given action or skill. It could become like just automatism, not really looked upon, and just something that you never actually improve on. Yeah? And any small skill, no matter how small, you can do it deliberately, and by doing deliberately, take action on it, retrospect on it, and improve on it. Yeah? Make sense? So that's why I care about this stuff. So then it becomes a question of, Romeu, should we do everything deliberately? And the answer is, I would love to, but it's impossible. It really is completely impossible. There is not enough time in a life to do that. Yeah? You could try to maximize deliberateness and tell me how that worked for you. But you cannot do everything. So there is some level of choice of what you make deliberate. Like, there is some level of deliberatory choice of what you make deliberate. Yeah? There is a level of deliberate choice of what you make deliberate. But you can only improve what you make deliberate. Now, a question that comes a lot when I say this is, but Romeu, some things, if I don't make deliberate, if I make deliberate, they will not be natural anymore. If I'm thinking about how to make music, I'm no longer make music, right? I need to be in the zone, right? Is the fear that analyzing what we do entrap us, right? Have you ever felt that fear? No, yes. And I believe that there is this loop that we call praxis of being deliberate, then foregoing being deliberate, then being deliberate again. You can do both. You can wink and blink. You can take some time to be deliberate, and sometimes you just forgot and do it. Right? You're not forced to be in one mode all the time. Make sense? You are not forced to be in one mode all the time. But you can choose to be deliberate. So there is a deliberate choice to what are you being deliberate about and when you are being deliberate about it. Yeah? And that you can practice too. Make sense? Too abstract maybe? Yes? So one way I tried, one heuristic I use to choose what I make deliberate is heuristic. The small actions become big actions. Something that is very small, but I do every single day, or I do a lot, many times per day, it's probably something worth to be deliberate about and improve on. For example, people that do professional cooks spend a lot of time learning how to improve the cutting of vegetables, right? They do that because they cut a lot of vegetables. So it's not that that skill is more important than the others. It's not that that skill is the thing that will make a good dish. Right? It's not because you're very good at cutting vegetables that you are a very good cook, right? It's because they do that a lot. Yeah? You read a lot of code. Might as well improve that skill. Yeah? Are we good? Are we good with the why? Okay. So, let's talk about reading skills, right? Adler, in his book, he talks about reading books, right? But I think the skills he talks about in reading books are usable to a certain extent to code, yeah? He goes into having four levels of reading, right? It is like outlining, indexation, I think the names are that. You can verify in his book. Analysis and semiological reading. 4 levels of reading. So Adler's idea is that it is easier and more efficient in his measures to read 4 times than 1, reading in different ways, right? That seems strange, because we rather just read things once. But it is a very similar argument to what we did when we invent test-driven development. That's TDD. Ever heard about TDD? Are we good with that? I don't need to explain TDD to you. No? Good. So in TDD, you have this thing about make it work. make it right, make it fast, yeah? It is cheaper to write the code 3 times than try to get it right like this, yeah? It is cheaper to just have a first implementation that is naive and just makes all the tests pass, and then try to think about, hey, is this the right way to do this? Is this the right design? Is this the right algorithm? Is this the right? To be in an edition mode. And then, after you do that, start thinking, hey, are these the good performance compromises? Doing this 3 times is cheaper to you and quicker in overall than try to have all those requirements in your head all the time to every little thing you're doing, right? Because they create tensions inside you. And if you like just following those tensions, instead of going, I'll make it work, I'll make it right, to go, and you lose time, waste. You create a lot of waste. Make sense? The insight of Adler is, well, when you're reading a book, it pays to I just look at the book real quick, and I look at the index, I'll look at the table of matters, I'll take some slicings of what each chapter is saying real quick. I'm not even reading for real everything. There is this first level of reading where I just create a map of the book in my head real quick. I look at the conclusions, this is not a technique to reading romances, right? It's a technique for reading articles and technical books and essays and things like that, right? I'm not saying others' work is not to help you read Shakespeare, right? That is not the intention, right? You go read Shakespeare, just enjoy the words, right? It's not a criticism of that. It's just the technique was not developed for that. Yeah, make sense? So you do an outline in your mind, and by doing this outline, you get a grasp about the structure of the book. Have you ever read a book? Have you ever read a book? Have you ever read a book, and by the time you are in the middle of it, you know how to find a place very quickly where to find a place in the book that you read something before, because you have this map of the book in your head, right? So what I say is, acquire that map. Acquire that map. Okay? And what he's saying when he says that is, maybe that's enough. Maybe you only do that in that outlining reading, and you get to the conclusion that by just reading the outline, having a map, and having a few words of each chapter, and the overall idea of what is the thesis of the book, maybe I should not read this book anymore, and I should throw it away. Now, have you ever struggled with not reading a book entirely in your life? Yeah. So let me help you, because I struggle with that too. You are mortal. You will die someday. Yeah? Accepting that is hard, but necessary. Yeah? So the number of pages of book you will read in your life is not a known number, but it's a finite number. Yeah? Every book page you read that you disliked is taking the place of a page book that you could be reading that you would be liking. The total number of pages will not change. It's just the quality of those pages will change, right? So if you're reading a book and it's not a good book, stop reading the book. Throw it away. Take another one. Do not fall to sunk cost fallacy. I have done this a lot. It's not worth it. It isn't. It really, really isn't. Yeah? You might ask yourself, but Romeu, some books, You hate them for like 800 pages, and then by the end of it, there is like this twist that make everything so worth it. Yeah? How many books have you read that are really, really like that? Right, like one, right, like, was it Shogun? Right. 3 victims of Shogun. Right. Right. So I only had one book like that in my life. It was Shogun, and like all the others will not make it up for it. Just assume the book is bad. Yeah. Don't worry. Don't worry. So once you accept that, like, outlining reading can be enough reading, right? Get the gist of it. Get the sparkly notes. Get just at this level of reading and do something like that. Then other invites you, if you want to really read more, you can have a second reading, right? Make sense? Second reading is indexation reading. Indexation reading is a very funny way of reading that takes a lot of practice to get into, right? Is never go back. You start reading and your eyes go into advance-only mode. Yeah? They only read the next words, next words, next words. You do not understand the paragraph before, fuck it. Continue. Do not return to reread it to get to understand it. You just continue it. Yeah? It will be quick. It takes, the most time it takes to that is letting it go and accepting to do it. That's the most expensive part. But once you learn how to do it, it can be very, very, very quick. Yeah? That's indexation reading. Yeah? And other argues that it is like you will be wasting less time to read 2 times, do 1 indexation reading and 1 normal reading, than just trying to do the normal reading from the get-go. That's his thesis, whether you agree with that or not. That's the invitation of Mortimer Adler. Yeah? Are we good? Analytical reading is what we call reading. Right? The way you're reading today, normally, hopefully, is what he calls analytical reading, right? You are reading a book and you try to understand what is happening in the book, right? And you just do a normal reading, you go, if you do not understand something, go back, try to understand it, and sometimes you go back a few pages to try to get it completely, and you go back and forth, and you try to make sense of everything that's being said. You try to get it, try to read the whole book, right? That's what Adler calls analytical reading. So indexation is pretty skimming. I just skim the book real quick, and I just like read, and sometimes I'm just throw some paragraphs away and go away. I'm just trying to get the whole bang of it, yeah? And semiological reading is I read the book many times comparing to other books, yeah? Make sense? I'll get back to code real quick. So, analysis is something we always do with books. Semiological Adler argues not many books are worth doing a semiological reading. Like, there are some rare books in your life where it's just worth it to read the book again and again and compare to many other books. Yeah? Some incredible works of philosophy or something like that. There are some rare books that are worth a semiological reading per Adler. Yeah? Now, what's good is because when you look at code, we switch things around a lot because we're doing semiological reading all the time. You're always reading code and comparing to other places in the code base. And it changes meaning by comparing to these other places in the code base. Yeah? Makes sense? Do you see yourself doing that? Yeah? So, The way I do that myself is that I'm always, because many things, you always condemn to do that, right? The way I do that is that I'm always using those levels of reading with code. We're saying, okay, can I just outline? Can I do a first reading with just outlining? Can I do a first reading that is just analysis? Can I do a first reading that is just indexation? I'm pushing towards the top of this pile to try to help me have continuous, smaller levels of understanding to apprehend the code. Make sense when I say that? I'm not only using those techniques, just giving all the reading techniques I have. I do a lot of what Michael Feathers called scratch refactoring. I do small refactorings of code that I will throw away. They will not be committed, right? I will throw them away, and they are there just to help me read the code. Yeah? I do a lot of Ariadne's threads. I'm reading the code and I'm noting every place I pass in the code in order to get an understanding of what was my current path of reading. Yeah? Things like that. Make sense? I do a lot of exploratory property-based testing. So, property-based testing, have you heard about it? I have a talk about it. You can watch it on the internet. It is a bet you make with your code. You bet that the code has this behavior, and the property-based testing framework tries to prove you wrong. Yeah? When I do not understand the code, I start betting what I think should be the behavior of the code, and the property-based testing framework tells me you're wrong. And now I'm getting a better reading. I'm grasping. Yeah? Make sense? Those are tools I use to read. I'm not saying that you should be reading like this. I'm saying this is the way I used to help myself to read. And maybe you can share your own tools to read, right? That's the invitation. But let's talk about feelings. Let's talk about emotional coping skills. When you read code, you usually, with feelings, under the influence of one's emotions, yeah? Usually those feelings are feelings that are not very joyful, yeah? It happens a lot. So I was trying to find ways to cope with you. One way I cope a lot, have you ever read of Halon's razor? No? Let's go there. Let's go to Halon's razor. Halon's razor says, do not attribute to malice that which stupidity explains very well. Yeah? So, if I'm angry at the code, I tend to ask myself, okay, am I currently saying this person was sabotaging? Can I at least try to accuse the person of being stupid? Yeah? Okay. But that's not enough. That's not enough. I'm trying to reduce my anger here. Like, coding in anger is not very good for me. So I go from malice to stupidity. But then I try to go from stupidity towards is the person just ignorant? Right? Instead of saying, hey, was this person stupid? I could say, hey, was the person ignorant? It's not much better, but like, I start to create a new narrative in my life, in my head when I do that. Maybe the person was just like beginner on this stuff or something like that. Then I start going from ignorant towards, was this person in an unstated context? Right. There are many ways where, many days in my life that I was looking at people do some code that I find god awful. And I walk with them through that because it was not committed yet, and we discuss about it. And when they discuss about it, they tell me many reasons why they took those choices. And after a while, I start to look at this situation and say, hey, I'll probably have written the same thing. And I can bet that you could look behind and look at some code you're not like completely happy with in the past and say, hey, I had this and this reason why I wrote that way, and something like that. So maybe the person has a lot of context there that I just do not know. Yeah? And then I go from unstated context towards under systemic pressure. Like, a lot of people are in the pressure of like, just deliver this real quick right now. And if they had like space and time and patience and like just being with themselves, they probably would write different things. And I don't know how much of that code is the expression of a human being, of the expression of the system of production in which the code was produced. As a matter of fact, I did you can find on the internet kebab kata, the kebab kata. There are many articles about it, but like, that's the facilitator's guide. I did a workshop. Is a workshop that I do a lot. I did like more than 800 people at this point. And it's a workshop where I just try to reproduce the kind of problems people have every day when producing code with the environment, just like the pressures we have and things like that. And people code in the workshop, and by the end of like 4 interactions, up until now, 100% of participants, they produce code they regret. Right? Every time I ask the questions, every time the person says, yes, this code is regretful, I would, if I had time, I would do this code in this way, and this way, and this way. Like, we pressure people in specific ways to produce in a specific way, and then that has consequences. And I'm not saying the individuals are completely powerless, and I'm not trying to excuse every human behavior by the pressures of the system. What I'm saying is, it is naive to individualize the writing code as like putting all the power on the person that wrote it. Our systems of production make code sad. Makes for sad code, makes for code that makes you sad when reading. Yeah? Makes sense? So I try, even though I know all that, I still go from those from time to time. I still try to accept it. So I use this as a reminder to myself to cope. I'm not saying that you should be doing it. I'm just sharing with you what worked for me. Yeah? Another thing I do a lot is this dude called Marshall Rosenberg that created a thing called nonviolent communication. The name is awful. I hate the naming, but I hate a lot of naming, right? And but like, it's a set of useful tools. And in NVC, you have a matter of we called self-empathy, right? There is a technique that you can Google and look into it with self-empathy, where I try to look at name the feelings I'm feeling, name the feeling I'm feeling, and trying to find the underlying unmet need. So I go to, okay, I'm angry or I'm sad. Just the act of naming it is a actually pretty useful action on itself. Like, it's surprisingly useful action on itself that has helped me many times. I encourage you to try. It is something that has helped me. Anyway, yeah? Make sense? Okay. Nothing of this would be revolutionary to you. I just like trying to instill some thinkings about, hey, what can I try here? From the very beginning, I say, my attempt to you is try to push you from blinking to winking towards reading. Yeah? It's like taking time to look into your own practice of reading. If you try to name the techniques you use today, probably you have names. You end up having names for them. Even if they are not very conscious today, they can become conscious. And then you can share them, learn from each other. Make sense to say that to you? Yeah? Okay. Another technique I use a lot is to handle my feelings when I'm reading code, is I go for a walk. Shower, nap. I take a break. I can disconnect from the thing itself. This seems very useless to say because everybody does it, but like, do you? Like, it's a very useful skill that has helped save my ass many times. I sometimes just like excuse myself to the loo just to take a break. Right? Even in the middle of like a session with people or something like that. Like the action of stopping, the action of just giving time to yourself, with yourself, to welcome your feelings, right? It is a necessary step. And when I start practicing this self-empathy thing, just like start practicing naming my feelings, listening to myself, trying to live with them. For me, it came towards being able to sit with the feeling without neither ignoring it nor completely just entering it, right? Just being present with my feeling itself. Make sense when I say that? Or not? It's like holding a crying baby, basically. But a crying baby is you, yeah? And you also doing the holding, yeah? And like letting my feelings like express themselves while welcoming them, instead of trying to say I should not be feeling this. Yeah? And I'm not saying that will be one difficulty you have, but it's certainly a difficulty that I had. Once I start listening to a feeling of like I'm sad or I'm angry or something like that, then I have another part of me that goes into judging mode and say, I should not be feeling that, right? And then there is another part of me that tells that part, you should not be judging that, right? And I tend to try to welcome all those parts. Hey, okay, you are angry at this. Okay, you are angry that you have that anger. Okay, you are angry that you have the anger of the anger, right? I try to listen to all of those screaming babies and hold them and discuss with them, welcome them, nourish them. And it has helped me to welcome them instead of trying to ignore them or putting them on the side. It's something that has helped me a lot. Why it has helped me? It has helped me to not fall in them in a loop and just let them express and go back and be in a better disposition to read or to be present to what I'm living. Make sense when I say that? So, the feeling, the judgment of the feeling, the judgment of the judgment. So, does this draw a picture to you of things to do when reading code and things to do when trying to handle the feelings you have when reading code? Do you start seeing a picture of things to try? Are any of these new to you? And do you get any technique from this list? None. Nobody. Yes? See? Yes? Okay. Something. Good. Do you want to add to this list? Do you have techniques you would like to share with us? Either to read or to cope.
I'm not sure if this belongs here, but I start reading code by reading the tests.
Yes. Let's go there.
So it's probably outline, not starting with the tests directly.
Reading the test. I can outline the test, I can indexate the test, I can analyze the test, but like, read the test. Yeah, read the test. Right, yes.
We write code addressed to two audiences.
Yes.
We write code addressed to the compiler.
Yes.
We write code addressed to the future programmer.
Right.
Myself.
Yeah.
And one of them is the structure semantics of the code, and one of them is the naming conventions used for the variable names and the comments. And we need to read in both modes. We need to read as though I'm a compiler, and that's things like the tests and the behavior of the code. And we need to read as though I'm a human. And what intent or what world model or what context is behind the code.
Yeah.
We train ourselves to read in both of those modes.
Yeah. Splitting my brain between try to compile and between try to human. I have this gentleman and then this gentleman. Yes?
Yeah.
Louder.
About this also. It was like, on the feelings part, in the end, take into account the systemic context.
Yes.
But, like you said, we're talking about humans. Why systemic? Why not just the whole context of the person? Depending on how this person was feeling when he was writing.
Oh, when I say systemic, I talk about the human system, right? I'm not talking about even about the code system at all at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also individual person.
Okay, yeah. Thinking about the individual that wrote helped you. Okay.
Also about the context, finding the original story, the original acceptance criteria.
Archaeology helps you. Okay, yes. Doing history of what happened here. But the thing is, to do that, it's time-consuming, right? Finding those information, so like giving yourself the time, that then becomes a problem in itself. But yes, very useful way of coping. Yeah. 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 Friend.
You mentioned that you do scratch refactoring. I often do refactoring in order to understand.
Yes. So if I commit, it is no longer just reading, right? It enters the stage of writing, right? One of the reasons the reason I enter into reading is I do refactoring and scratch refactoring, but I do not consider refactoring as part only of reading. It's part of many things. But the scratch refactoring, I do it and consider it also part of reading. And the reason I would do some scratch refactoring instead of committing is that scratch refactoring allows me to even do refactorings that will never compile or are naive and things like that. And that naivety allows me to explore the code in different ways, to flex the code in different ways that maybe help me understand it differently. Right? Not everything I do in scratch refactoring is something that I would like to keep. Mostly it isn't. And it still helps me read, right? So
Sometimes it also helps you to get from nullers to the
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else want to share something? Yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Sorry. When I say ignorant, I was like unexperienced, if you want. Like.
Yeah, but ignorant exists too. So I would not.
Oh yeah, we can do that. Sorry.
Where was the question on?
He says, can we go from ignorant to an experience, basically? So it was that. Thank you. So this, we have like 5 minutes. I just like to wrap, right? I just take some. When we talk about all of this, we enter the problem of. Okay, but is this not like masturbatory, Romeu? Are you like, you're looking at this, it's like, are you not wasting time? Yeah? Precious time that you could be using to write some code or something like that. It circles back to the initial why. And this goes to the theme of the whole day. The whole day we do talks about I try to apply philosophy to tech, right? And for me, the central point of here is this question of why do philosophy at all? Why I'm not trying to like define philosophy. There are tens of books that you can find named what is philosophy. The philosophers do not agree on what is philosophy, so I'm not trying to define philosophy. But have you ever seen somebody say, "No, this is philosophical. It doesn't matter"? Have you ever seen phrases like that? Yeah? So I'll try to connect you to that phrase. There is this joke that I love by a guy called Existential Comics. This guy, right? He says, it's a dialogue between two characters. He says, why do philosophy? And the other characters answer, I don't know. Why do engineering? And the first character say, well, engineering. And the first character stops and say, and now we are doing philosophy. The thing is, friends, you are not saying that philosophy is useful. What I'm saying is that philosophy is inevitable. You are the apes condemned to do philosophy. That's the human condition. And like, at some point, those questions that are being around in philosophy for thousands of years, at some point, they will come to your brain. Fighting that is useless. Those questions will come. Questions about, hey, what is this thing in front of me? Or how do I know that I know something? Or how do I know this? Or what is a good way to do this, right? For any value of this. Like, those are questions of aesthetics, those are questions of justice, those are questions of values, of ethics, those are questions of phenomenology. How do I know that things are that? There's a very beautiful book, Phenomenology of Dancing, Phenomenology of Dancing, that just asks this question about how do I know that people are dancing? When I look at them, right? And you are the ape condemned to have those questions. your only choice is to know whether you want to learn from the other apes that struggle with those questions before, or if you want to raw dog it yourself. Those are the only things on the menu, right? Do you want to learn from the mistakes of the past, or do you want to do them yourself? Both are very equally valid options, right? On the action that you're going to have anyway. And I picked learning from the mistakes of my ancestors, but like, you could do you. I'm not criticizing that at all. Like, a lot of philosophers actually argue that everybody should just do themselves and not read the other philosophers. Like, really, it's equally valid. But I find uselessness in doing that. Thank you, friends. Have a nice day.